Good evening, everybody. My name is Luke Vannice, and I serve as president of the Tacoma Tree Foundation. Welcome. Tonight, I have the privilege of introducing to you some of the many folks that play a key role in our urban forest. Thank you to each and every one of you for choosing to be here tonight for the 2025 State of the Urban Forest. As a landscape architect, my practice involves collaborating closely with urban planners, engineers, architects, and stakeholders to design a resilient built environment. And trees are a key part of this due to the many ecosystem services they provide. To my knowledge, trees are the only piece of civic infrastructure that gains value with time. Think about that a little bit. As utility infrastructure, they sequester carbon, mitigate stormwater runoff, and keep Tacoma cool. They create a sense of place, defining a space, and providing shelter from the rain and summer heat. They offer habitat complexity, beauty, and their fruits can nourish our bodies. These ecosystem services are on display right here at UW-Tacoma Microforest, a project conceived by students, faculty, and TTF to bring much-needed green space to downtown Tacoma and test alternative methods of urban forestry. The concept plan features fully accessible paths connected to a variety of seating options for outdoor learning, hanging out, or eating lunch. It includes art to tell stories of the Puyallup people, Japantown, and the role trees have played in the development of Tacoma. Phase 1 of the microforest was installed by student volunteers and TTF during the UW Day of Giving just last month. So if you get the chance sometime, go kitty corner from Tolleson Plaza, check it out on the corner of 17th and Jefferson. It's pretty awesome. The UW-T Microforest and Tacoma Tree Foundation's work are both driven by a belief that planting a tree is a vote for our future. It means we believe in tomorrow and each other, and that a fair urban forest is possible. For the past 7 years, the Tacoma Tree Foundation has been planting toward the future alongside neighbors, government partners, and local organizations. Recently, citywide data suggests our collective efforts are working. As we will see tonight, tree equity in Tacoma is improving. This evening, we'll hear about new tree canopy data collected by the City of Tacoma Urban Forestry Program, about the city's 5-year plan to improve urban forest outcomes, and how TTF is supporting communities to ensure today's trees are here tomorrow. Now, tonight, our first guest I have the pleasure of introducing is Kim Camara. Kim began her life path being born in Yellowstone and growing up later on the Upper Elwha in Olympic National Park. She has Northern Arapaho and Blackfeet affiliations, alongside growing up with Lower Elwha, S'Klallam, and Makah peoples. These have contributed to her cultural, heritage arts, event production and choreography, research and environmental experiences, and community service work. As executive director of Winds of Change Alliance, Kim advocates the Windz vision to respectfully bridge and strengthen Indigenous tribal communities' peoples, presence, place, sacred spaces, and relationships. Now let's kick off the evening by welcoming Kim Camara to acknowledge the land on which we are on.
I'm going to give you a little teaching. I felt compelled to walk counterclockwise to the podium, which is a Coast Salish coastal practice. Plains people go clockwise. So there you go. Thank you for that beautiful introduction and for Tacoma Tree Foundation welcoming me here. So I would like to ask that all of you stand. Those elders who are not able to, it's okay to sit. And as we stand, we give acknowledgement to our peoples of the East, the Snoqualmie, and those across the plateau and mountains. As we move south, we acknowledge the Muckleshoot, those confederated peoples of the various groups that were impacted by the Point Elliott Treaty. And as we move further south to Puyallup, to the lands that we're all standing on, that we all acknowledge being the first lands of the Puyallup peoples, alongside the Nisqually, alongside the Skokomish, and then further south, all the others that came and met in the waterways here. And as we move up the Sound, we give acknowledgement to the Suquamish, the Port Gamble Sklalams. We continue across the Puget Sound, across Elliott Bay, and we acknowledge all of those peoples that originally, including the Duwamish, and in this case, we acknowledge our elder, Tacoma Tree Foundation's elder, Winds of Change's elder, Jeffrey Thomas, John Halliday, who are of the first peoples of Chief Cheshiahud Longhouse Village on Lake Union, around Lake Washington, around Sammamish. And as we move a little bit north, the Tulalipes, and then all those that go up the line, the Swinomish, the Soxswaddle, the Stillaguamish, the Lummi, and all of those around who we all intermingle and all meet at some point along our pathways. And as we call upon the ancestors of all these peoples and of all our ancestors standing in this room, may each and every one of us acknowledge them and know that their sacred presence brings the teachings, brings the knowledge, brings the spirit and the ability to be able to do the good work that everyone is doing. For we are here in acknowledgement of our tree peoples, of all of our animal peoples, our four-leggeds, our winged ones, our finned ones. And as we do this, may we send our spirits of relationship to connect with them so that all of us may interweave the culture of what we are here to be doing and what we're called to be doing. And as we give this acknowledgement, we give thanks, and we give thanks to everything that's connected to with the environment and the climate and the weather beings, the thunder beings, and all those that bring the blessings. So as you listen to the words that are given tonight, take them into your heart. Fulfill your knowledge, fulfill your understanding and awareness of all of the people that bring these teachings to you. And as you do this, acknowledge each and every one who's here in this room with you. We're here for a reason. And as we give thanks again from the heart, and we acknowledge all directions and all living beings and all relations. And with that, we say thank you. We say, in my culture, aho. Hands up in thanks, which is a coastal way. We welcome on behalf of all the Coast Salish and coastal people the words and the spirit that's now being brought into this room and into this space. So thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Next, I get to introduce Mike Carey and Councilmember Kristina Walker. Mike is the Urban Forest Program Manager with the City of Tacoma, working in green infrastructure with the city since 2011. I think I met Mike on the hilltop in January of 2022 at a branch out event. I'm so grateful for the close partnership and frankly friendship between Mike, Lisa, Ryan, and the rest of the crew at the city and TTF. To this partnership, we owe much of our success. As the city's urban forester, he is responsible for directing the city's programs and developing policy to support the implementation of the Urban Forest Management Plan. to sustain and enhance healthy tree canopy, and to improve human and environmental health outcomes for all Tacomans, one tree at a time. Councilmember Kristina Walker was elected to the City Council in 2019 and served as Deputy Mayor in 2023. From 2011 to 2020, she served as Executive Director of Downtown on the Go, a nonprofit organization that promotes and advocates for walking, biking, and transit in downtown Tacoma. Councilmember Walker chairs the City Council's Infrastructure, Planning, and Sustainability Committee and serves on the Community Vitality and Safety Committee. I would also like to give a shout out to Councilmember Olgi Diaz, who has been a strong advocate for Tacoma's urban forest and assisted in what you'll be hearing from Mike and Councilmember Walker this evening. Councilmember Walker and Mike, thank you for your hard work advocating for the urban forest.
Hello, good evening. I'm Kristina Walker. I am one of your at-large Tacoma City Council members. I also serve on the Pierce and Sound Transit Board and am a big advocate, if you couldn't tell from the introduction, for multimodal transportation. My favorite thing to do is think about land use policy and transportation and how we make great urban spaces. And so the work that Tacoma Tree Foundation does and the conversations I get to have with Lowell on a regular basis are really why I'm here serving on the City Council, but why I'm also here tonight. I'm going to talk a little bit quickly on this first overview around what we have done on policy. I'm going to kick it over to Mike to reveal the LiDAR data. This is our very first night. And then we'll finish up with the policy work that we're doing right now that you can get involved in. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the work that we do sort of generally, and we'll apply that then to the work that we have done. So anytime we start a new policy at the City of Tacoma, it comes from an idea, whether that's from staff, whether it's from council, whether it's from community. We figure out what the problem we're trying to solve, and that's where we get to hear a lot from community. So we are at this moment in our tree policy, so this is a great time for you all to get involved. We'll get back to that later. Then as we work through the process, we need to understand the community vision and priorities, more public outreach. What do people want to see? How do we get this done? What do you think makes our city better? Oops. And then moving on, we get into that deep research. And that's where, and I also want to give a big shout out to my policy analyst, Kristina Kahn, who does this research, develops plans, worked on this presentation tonight, but really gets into that nitty gritty. What are other cities doing? How could we do that? How does it apply to Tacoma? And this is where we talk to staff, we talk to council, and we talk to legal. How are we going to get this done? Then, of course, we have to secure budget and resources and send it off to staff to do the implementation. Then, as you see it happening, that's when we want to hear from you again. Is it working? What could we do better? So everything we do goes through this process. So this will be a quick overview of all the things that we've done, and all of these have gone through that big, full process. I'm not going to go through all of these. I think you all know. I know I'm preaching to the tree choir. You know about the climate action plan. You know of the good work that has happened here in Tacoma. I'm going to focus just on the last couple years. So in 2021, we did an update to the Climate Action Plan that had a range of actions to improve the city's urban forest, a good baseline for us to get these things done. We also then in 2023 created our urban forestry right-of-way enforcement. The regulations that were non-existent before. We had no regulations around right-of-way. So we got that policy in place, and that is actually being enforced right now. That is up and running. We actually have staff. We budgeted for staff to make sure that that project is being enforced. So if there are people taking down trees in the right-of-way, please let us know. We established as part of that same TMC the establishment of Tacoma's first ever heritage tree program, a very exciting step. And then I know Mike's going to talk a little bit about this later, but I also wanted to mention our urban wood reuse program, understanding, acknowledging that sometimes trees do come down, whether it's a storm, whether it's a sick tree, whether it's some tree that's hazard that we need to take down. We don't want that to go in the landfill. We want that to get used. So we're really excited about that program expanding. There's a lot happening already, but there's opportunity there as well. And then this last spring, we adopted the Urban Forest Priority Action Plan, and that's what I'm going to get into at the end after Mike gives you some highlights on our programs. But that's what we're in the middle of right now, our Urban Forest Priority Action Plan. Kick it over to Mike.
Good evening, everyone. What a great looking crowd of people. I'm humbled actually to stand here today. I still remember the days when Lowell and I would meet in coffee shops, and we would find some really cool new geeky data to share, and it would just be the two of us hanging out, or a few of us, I'll say, hanging out, and now we're filling a whole room. This is pretty awesome, very humbling. So I really briefly wanted to touch on a few of the things, the big picture things that have happened in the last couple of years. Obviously, there's so much work happening all across the city in all different facets. I'm going to hyper-focus on just a few of them here. So one thing I wanted to call out is we have been growing in capacity. Back in 2015, we just got through a lull where we didn't have any urban foresters working for the city. Since that time, we hired an urban forest program manager. Hi. We hired an urban forestry analyst to start with the implementation of the urban forest management plan we just adopted in 2020. We got a community tree program coordinator, Lisa. I don't know if you want me to call you out, but I think everybody in this room probably already knows Lisa. She's a badass, I'm just going to say that. To do the real work, to help build community, working with our great partners at the Tree Foundation to get trees into our neighborhoods. We hired a permit compliance arborist recently as well. So Councilmember Walker just mentioned that we updated our right-of-way tree ordinance, and this position helps to review all the permits that come in, help with development community, make sure that people are doing the right things for the right reasons, and if they make mistakes, help them walk through that, and if they do the wrong things for the wrong reasons, also we have ways to deal with that too. We also hired an arborist crew, which is the first time that we have had an arborist crew in 20 years working for the city. So we now, as of this year, have a 2-person arborist crew that's doing tree work. They're helping to keep our tree assets, which I think earlier was described as trees are public infrastructure. Can you all say that with me? Trees are public infrastructure. Thank you. Thank you for the support. So trees are public infrastructure. They are essential to the vitality of our communities. And now we have people that are keeping our existing tree assets, that infrastructure, healthy. And then lastly, right now, I want to announce that we are in the process of hiring a construction arborist. And this position is specifically going to help capital construction projects in the city of Tacoma to make sure that if there's a conflict where we're building a new sidewalk or a utility, we can work around existing trees and not, oh crap, what happened? I didn't know that tree was there after it's too late. And so this position is really going to help us save as many trees as we can and work safely around them. Okay. Another highlight here, so expanding programs and partnerships, right? So we have this phenomenal partnership with the Tree Foundation, which allows us to get tons of trees into our communities. Our first year with this community tree program partnership between the city and the Tree Foundation, we got 515 trees out to 204 households. Year 2, 747 trees to 292 households. And year 3, I will just say, I think we're going to have some new data coming out pretty quickly here, but I think we're going to blow recent stats out of the water with this year. We have had more requests for trees this year than we have ever received before. And again, it's this amazing partnership that we have between the city's resources and planning efforts and the Tree Foundation's ability to get into our communities and make the work happen. So we also have supplied, because of this increased demand for trees, we have supplied long-term grow contracts with nurseries. We can no longer produce the trees that we need for our programs anymore in-house, so we have to get sustainable grow contracts. So we've established a couple that are for the next 5 years at least. And then our plant holding facility, how many people in this room knew that the city has a nursery, a tree nursery? Okay, there's some people out there. Well, guess what? We have a tree nursery. And in this space, it's a pretty fantastic space. I would invite you all to come out and volunteer and participate out there if you get the opportunity to do so. We have plant potting parties out there often, or we receive tree deliveries for our programs as well. In this space, it's pretty magical. We get a ton of trees in, see a bunch of partners working together to offload trees and get them out into our community. And also in this space, we have storage capacity for our partners too. The Tree Foundation has trees there. Pierce County has trees there. Parks Tacoma has historically had some trees there as well. And so it's a facility that helps us support all of our neighbors and partners doing the work together. Okay, and then the Hazardous Tree Assistance Program, and then I swear I'm going to speed this up. So started in 2021, this program was born out of an issue that we have in Tacoma, which is that street trees in the right-of-way, and so that's that area that's outside of parceled property, typically street trees is what we're gonna call them, those are actually owned by the abutting property owner. And so if a big tree gets sick, becomes a hazard, needs to come down, the costs for that work are borne by that abutting owner. And as you can imagine, a lot of people call the city saying, hey, you've got a big sick tree out here, I just want you to know. We had to tell them, hey, thanks for self-reporting, I'm sorry, but that's your tree. And you have to deal with that, and that can be really expensive. So understanding the city council passed the budget for this hazardous tree assistance program. And through that program, the city can hire a contractor, deal and mitigate for the hazard, whether it's pruning or removal, and then replacing the tree if it gets removed. And we have seen a phenomenal uptick in people who are actually able to receive these services. And these are people who either qualify for utility bill assistance or live in historically underserved neighborhoods that might not have the ability to afford the removal themselves. And through this program in just a couple of years, we have removed 33 huge, I will say, huge hazardous trees and pruned about 570 trees through this program as well. So again, it's this community resource helping to support folks who otherwise might not be able to do it themselves. And through that program, as was mentioned, we are starting this urban hardwood reuse program. And so of the 33 trees that have been removed for hazard, 8 of them have gone into this diversion to a local mill partner that turns that wood into a usable product. Park benches, coffee tables, donation to school wood shops, those have all been products that have come from these trees that otherwise would have landed in the landfill. Through that, we actually decided that we want to understand the full cycle of urban hardwood that gets removed in the city. And so we have partnered with a company called Cambium Carbon, who's doing an urban hardwood reuse study for us. And we're figuring out what all the inputs into the system are, and then how could we create infrastructure to process that wood waste so it doesn't go to a landfill. That's coming out, actually, I think it's probably in my inbox right now, the final draft of the report, and but it should be coming out in the next month or two to the public. And then, as was mentioned, the arborist crew. And this is something that I'm personally really excited about. We are, for the first time, we are walking the walk. In 20 years, we have not had a tree crew to do the work, and now we're able to do that. This is just a fun image that I like to show. Fun is relative. We got this really weird call about a tree fire from the fire department. And asked us if we could use our arborist crew to access this tree. This tree had an internal decaying cavity going all the way up through the top. As you can see here, it's a pretty big catalpa tree. And they could not physically access the cavity to put the fire out. And so our tree crew, while the tree was burning, was able to remove the upper canopy of it and access. And the picture here on the right is one of our tree crew members, Jeff, and he is able to access the cavity and then take the fire hose and put the fire out. And had we not had a tree crew, that tree probably would have been burning for a couple days. And so it's also like public safety. There's a lot of things to say about public safety and hazardous tree abatement, but this is one in particular that's just kind of an interesting story I thought you might appreciate. Okay, so that's rapid fire, some big stuff that's happened. And again, all of this has been happening through the support of City Council and community members such as yourselves showing up to say, this matters to us, we want to see change in our neighborhoods, and City Council showing up for the call. And they've really done a ton of work in the past 5 years to make significant strides in strategies and policy and planning and in resourcing. So I hope that was conveyed through this. Next, I'm about to get super nerdy and tree stuff. So if you need to stand up and stretch, feel free to do so. Just know that this has been a 2-year process obtaining new LiDAR data for the city. Lots of contracting, flying helicopters and airplanes. Some planes got down for a while. Got the data, had to do a lot of QA/QC. If I start glazing over a little bit, I've had my head deep in spreadsheets for about 2 weeks to generate a lot of this data. And so just like, I don't know, clap really loud and wake me up if you need to. Okay, I'm gonna be as quick as I can with super deep data. And if you, throughout the presentation, if you have questions, please make sure to just write those down. You can catch me in the hall afterwards. I'm happy to get deep with you. Also, I think we're gonna provide this data publicly on our website very, very soon. Some of it's already available. And I'm sure the Tree Foundation is gonna share it out wide as well. So quickly, LiDAR. Show of hands, who in the room knows what LiDAR is? Oh, fantastic. We got some smart people in the room. Okay, so LiDAR is essentially shooting laser beams, and I'm looking at some folks. I can't say this in a public setting without saying pew pew every time I say laser beams. Apologize. It might come out later too. So laser beams are shot at the Earth from an aircraft overhead, and then they're able to essentially detect and measure when those laser beams come back into the aircraft, the density of the material, the height of the material, and so they can slice and dice that data in so many different ways to isolate objects on the Earth. How is that Earth's surface covered? And so, for instance, you can tell things like trees, bare earth, buildings, right? And technology's come a long way in the last few years, and they have advanced learning algorithms now that can give you a tremendous amount of detailed information with that data, of which I'm going to share some with you tonight. So really quickly, kind of two different waves of information that come out of this data that the city recently obtained. On the left-hand side here, you can see a land cover analysis. And essentially what that looks like is it's counting first returns. So when the laser beam gets shot down, it measures when it comes back up, and the first object that it touches gets classified as a surface. And so this image that you can see is colorized here with buildings, with paved surfaces, tree canopy, lots of other things as well, water bodies, for instance. On the right, you can isolate some of that data set, and then you can extrapolate information and attach information to points in space, points on a landscape. And from that, you can gain information like how tall are trees? What is the vitality as a proxy for health for trees? If it's deciduous or coniferous, and if it's a dominant class of tree or if it's a co-dominant species. So we have that information citywide now. It is a ton of information, and again, I apologize if I say pew-pew a couple more times, but just know I've been deep in spreadsheets, so you're gonna have to deal with it. Okay, our LiDAR history really quickly. Our first LiDAR assessment was back in 2011, and it used 2009 imagery at 1 meter resolution, and that's kind of the aerial imagery that gets collated with 2003 leaf-off LiDAR. And it is really hard to be precise with leaf-off LiDAR when you're measuring trees, just to put that out there. We reassessed in 2018, and we had gained 1%. We were then at 20% tree canopy using 2017 data. And then this most recent assessment, again, the analysis was done in 2025 using 2024 data, has sharper imagery than we've ever had before, so half meter. And again, 2024 ortho imagery and LiDAR flown at the same time. And so you really do have a full picture of your information on the ground. Some different data sets you can pull looking at the landscape scale type of analysis from this. This is just really quick screenshots I took today even. So you see on the left, just basic tree canopy. So the area of the surface of the earth that's covered in trees. You can also understand how tall those objects are. And so this second image over is just a height analysis. This is actually Buckley Gulch in Tacoma, if folks in the room are familiar with Buckley Gulch. You can also, again, understand tree type. So this is looking at the difference between what is a deciduous tree and a coniferous tree, and they used advanced learning algorithms to tell the shape of the tree and the color of the leaves to be able to tell those tree types. And then again, tree vitality. You can kind of, as a proxy, look at essentially the density of the leaves, the coloration of the leaves, and the typical form of the tree to understand if those trees might be healthy or sick. And as a land manager, this is really important because there are areas out in the forest you couldn't necessarily get to or wouldn't have trails to access often. But if you're able to drill in and see a pocket of poor vitality trees, you know, oh, I should go check that out. They might have laminated root rot or something that would be of concern that we might want to get out and take a look at. From all of this crazy data, you can do analyses citywide and understand what does our tree distribution look like. This is actually a real graph of this new information we have for City of Tacoma's tree distribution. And so you can see here about 29% of our tree population, of the total tree population of all trees in Tacoma, are between 0 and 20 feet tall. On the other end of the spectrum, less than 1% are greater than 140 feet tall. And this isn't a true proxy for age of tree, right? Because we know that there's some small species of trees that have been growing for a long time but won't get very tall. But generally speaking, you can use this as a proxy for age. And so you can see the bulk majority of our tree population is young and establishing. They are not necessarily mature or maturing. In a healthy distribution of trees in a city, you would expect to see this trend line flatten out a little bit more. You want more trees in that mature category to get the real benefit from the ecosystem services of trees. Okay, it's getting real. Land cover, citywide data. Okay, there's a lot of information. I apologize again in advance. You're gonna see a ton of numbers on the next few slides. Catch me in the hall if you need to talk more. But I wanted to quickly show, because we have had the same snapshot in time back in 2017 as we have now in 2024, you can look at trending. Where are we gaining? Where are we losing? The map you're seeing on the left here is just our current tree canopy distribution across the city aggregated by census block. And so you can see our tree canopy, although we're at 21%, is not distributed equally or equitably, if you know Tacoma's landscape, across Tacoma. On the right, you'll see a table, and it breaks out the different land cover categories. And in the far right column, you can see the land cover change over time. So we've gained 1% tree canopy since the last, which is great. You all should be applauding. That's fantastic. It's due to the work of all of you in the room, right? We have also gained 3% in buildings, which is an interesting stat, right? So one of the things we do in our cities is we want to develop, right? We want to make sure that we have a lot of our density in our cities to protect the forests outside of our cities. And so seeing stats that we're increasing tree canopy and also increasing building density from an urban planning standpoint is pretty significant. And we are also decreasing, this is the shocked face, decreasing impervious surface in Tacoma, which is pretty awesome to see too, right? Thank you. Thank you. So what you're seeing here, the dark gray bar at the bottom, is the aggregate total of the buildings and other impervious surface together. So you can see, generally speaking, we're getting a lot more buildings, we're reducing impermeable surface, and the total impermeable surface is declining in Tacoma. This map is that land cover change over time. Again, kind of categorized by census block here. What I want to know, or what I want all of you to know, is that while the city is gaining tree canopy, not everyone is gaining tree canopy, right? So if we look at our neighborhoods, we see these hot spots. The yellow is a decrease in tree canopy by 2% or greater. The purple is an increase in tree canopy by 6% or greater. So you can see the areas that we're getting trees and the areas that we're losing them. I'm going to drill into this in a little bit too. This is an impervious surface distribution map across the city. You can tell what areas are mostly impervious and what areas are not, right? I think if you all are from Tacoma and kind of walk around, you can see this in the landscape. And this is that land cover change over time, again, from 2017 to now. And so you can see neighborhoods pop up as hot zones for actually increasing impermeable surface, even though the city as a whole is decreasing. So it begs the question, right? So if we're seeing these trends, but we know that not everything's happening equally across the city, we start asking questions like, why might that be? What are other trends that we're seeing across the city? And I don't know how many folks in the room were involved during the Home in Tacoma process or how much background you have on it, but it is the single biggest rezoning of Tacoma's landscape in a generation. And what I'll say about that is that there are specific neighborhoods during that entire process. It was several years of research. We had consultants doing a ton of research and analysis for the environmental impact statement. They did a market analysis to figure out what areas in Tacoma are developing, right? So what areas are actively getting a lot of new units. And what you might notice here is on the right-hand side is that market analysis. You can see the areas that are high market rates, meaning they're developing actively. Downtown East Side, North End, and Northeast Tacoma. If you look at those maps, you see on those maps that those are the areas that are actually decreasing tree canopy and increasing impermeable surface, right? So there's a correlation there. Now there's many other variables too that are not looked at in this very basic analysis, but we do see a correlation of, in these development scenarios where we have hot markets for new housing and new developments, we're seeing, generally speaking, decreases in tree canopy and increases in impermeable surface. And again, there's so many different ways to slice and dice this data. Land use is a really important one because the different intensities of land use have different opportunities for tree planting, right? So low-scale residential is generally going to be, a larger footprint for a lot with a smaller building and more space available to plant trees and other vegetation, right? Yard space. You can see the majority of the city's landscape is covered in this low-scale residential. And you can see all the different land uses here. I'm not going to walk through them all because then you're going to start going cross-eyed like me with those spreadsheets for the last couple days. But I will also call out the regional growth centers, those kind of purple areas, as intentionally dense areas, right? And so they are less compatible with tree canopy than areas like parks and open spaces or those low-scale residential neighborhoods. Okay, this is where I have to apologize again. There's a ton of numbers and information. Do not memorize this. Wipe it from your memory. The take home here is that you saw on that last map the distribution of different land uses across the city. And in this bar chart, what I'm conveying here is the orange bars represent the portion of the land area that makes up that land use. So on the far left, the low-scale residential, that orange bar is showing about 20 square miles of the city's land area, right, is that land use. The gray bar is the impermeable surface for that land use, and the green is the tree canopy. And so what I want you to notice here is the 4 largest land uses that are far left. Low-scale residential, for instance, is 42% of the city's land area, and it holds 18% tree canopy and 45% impervious. Parks and open spaces are 16% of the land area with 57% tree canopy, right? Much more compatible to growing trees, and 13% impervious. Heavy industrial is 13% of the land area with less than 4% tree canopy and 83% impervious. It is a significant amount of impermeable surface. And then the mid-scale residential. What's fascinating here is that mid-scale residential from a tree canopy perspective actually has as much tree canopy as a percent of the land area as low-scale residential, right? And the mid-scale tends to have a lot more units and more of the land area covered in those units too. It's really interesting data points. And again, as a land manager and people who are talking policy and development regulations, all of this data is really, really important for us to understand. I think most folks in the room who have had dealings with either the Tree Foundation or the city's urban forestry program before have seen this map. This is our tree planting prioritization tool. And what it looks like, we built it years ago to figure out if we only have one tree to plant, where's the best bang for our buck? How can we get the highest impact from that one tree in the ground? And so we built this model using our tree canopy information, our urban heat data set, and our equity index to figure out where can those trees go and who's going to benefit the most from them to stretch our resources the furthest we possibly can. And this map is showing the deep purple is the highest priority for us to plant trees, and then the lighter blue is the lowest priority for us to plant trees based on those indices. What I want to show you today is, we have in earnest been planting trees in those neighborhoods for 10 solid years. We have very intentionally been planting trees in specific neighborhoods of need in Tacoma. And this is just a snapshot of the last 5 years worth of tree planting data and the percentage of those trees by program that are going into these neighborhoods. So you can see, in 2024, for instance, Grit City Trees had 87% of those trees going to those neighborhoods of high priority. Branch Out had 97, Green Blocks 100%, and that's this amazing partnership we have. And actually, all of these programs we partner in some capacity with the Tree Foundation on, just to be very clear about that. And so one of the great lessons from this is we're planting, maybe 2,000 trees a year through these programs, the majority of which are going to these neighborhoods. And the map on the left, you'll see the size of the dot represents the volume of trees planted in that census block. Does that look familiar? So while the last time I looked at a comparison map, we showed the data around development and what's happening, there's the inverse that's happening here, where we're actively planting trees in our neighborhoods. And again, I just want to underscore that it is all of you sitting in this room who are helping to write that story. It is the Tree Foundation and the work they're doing with our communities. It is the city's urban forestry program and open space program and our partners. Making choices, conscious choices about where we spend our resources has an impact on our community. And what we're seeing is the areas with the highest tree growth are those areas where we're doing the work. We're planting the trees. Okay, more tree nerdery for you, for those data junkies in the room. Okay, tree population. This is what you all have been waiting for. I know it. There are 598,000 trees in Tacoma, of which 109,000 are in the right-of-way and 489,000 are on parceled property. So remember when I was talking about land use and who has the lion's share of the land use is low-scale residential? The ownership of those trees, 40% of our tree population is low-scale residential, and 36% is contained in parks and open spaces. Our tree typologies, 80% deciduous, 20% coniferous, which is interesting, right? I see some eyes in the room. We're the evergreen state. We've got a lot of evergreens, right? Tacoma's tree population is 80% deciduous. Again, it speaks volumes about the historic impacts of our tree population. Historically, this would have all been Douglas fir for the most part, right? Those lands were clear cut, and then we have put back modernized trees in our city, right? A lot of these are going to be more ornamental varieties of trees. Vitality is actually looking pretty good. 75% normal vitality with some in the high category and only 8% low vitality. Our average tree size in Tacoma is 25 feet wide crown and 47 feet tall, making up about 490 square feet. All right, I think a lot of people have been interested in this number for a long time. What would it take to get to our 30% tree canopy goal? It would take us about 243,270 trees, additional trees, of the average size that I just mentioned to get to our 30% tree canopy goal. For perspective, the city of Tacoma's population is about 230,000. So we're really talking about one tree per person in Tacoma-ish, right? It seems achievable when you put in that perspective. Okay, so the conclusions of all of that tree nerdery. So citywide, our tree canopy is trending in the right direction, right? Both tree canopy and building coverage has increased. We can see density and trees coexisting. Not all areas in Tacoma are increasing or decreasing at the same rate, right? And that should cause us to ask questions and figure out how can we change that narrative. Trends of canopy loss are associated with high markets for development, while trends of canopy gains are associated with targeted tree planting programs. Our proactive tree care has the ability to flatten that trend line of our tree age classes, right? Remember when I was talking about that graph saying, if we do more proactive tree maintenance to keep our existing trees healthy, we'll see more get pushed into that mature category. Low-scale residential and parks and open spaces holds 76% of our tree population currently. That is significant. And again, that number, 243,270, who's going to memorize that number? Of average tree size trees added to our tree population will get us to our goal. Okay, that was the LiDAR. Thanks for hanging in there. And I see most of you are still awake, so kudos. All right. And with that, I'm going to pass it back over to Councilmember Walker to talk about what do we do with this information? How can we start building on this shared momentum?
All right, we're going to really quickly wrap this up. I think that you've all heard, I hope you've all heard how important it is to have good policy, good staff, and great nonprofits. That's how we make this all happen. And so here's your opportunity to get engaged and get involved. So Mike and I are on a road show of neighborhood council meetings, and we're almost done. I think we have one or two left, but it's been a really good experience. I know a number of you are probably at some of those meetings, but getting into the nitty-gritty of how we're going to write this policy, what's going to be in there. Would you be willing to pay a fee if the city were to take on trees in the right-of-way? Do you think that you should be charged a permit fee that would then go back into our tree fund to plant more trees if you did need to take down a tree? Should you have a say as to what your neighbors do with their trees? These are the questions we're getting into. And please feel free to reach out. On the last slide, I'll give you all the contact info. We finalized the contract with a consulting firm, so we'll take all this information that we're gathering, work that staff has done, and work towards some development regulations regarding tree canopy. And then we will be doing a couple things next year as we continue this project. We're gonna look at ways to fund city tree maintenance. So that could include a fee, that could include a budget item. We're super proud of the work that we've done in our budgets to date to make sure that we got those arborists on staff and been able to invest in these tree plantings. But if we're really going to take on the entirety of the right-of-way, we're going to have to find a funding mechanism. So we're going to do some work around that. And then we're going to ask the Planning Commission to take a look at our land use and development regulations around tree canopy management and preservation on private property. So all of these things are happening in the next 6 to 8 months, and we would love to hear from you. I said this before. This work doesn't get done without policymakers who care, without staff that cares, and without nonprofits who care. So a big, huge thank you to Tacoma Tree Foundation. I love these photos because we literally would not be there if it weren't for the Tacoma Tree Foundation. They organized this great event. This is the green blocks, right? We had a good time planting, I don't know how many, hundreds. Oh, you guys are revealing the data next month. I don't want to give it away. We had so much fun planting trees. But truly, this is why I'm excited that the city continues to support Tacoma Tree Foundation, why I personally want to support Tacoma Tree Foundation, and why you all are going to tonight. Because we need all of us to make this happen. We are also very excited. We just launched our website. So all of this policy work, if you want to dig in deeper, it's all on the website. So you can see what our plan is, what the resolution specifically says. The LiDAR data will be up there soon. And if you want to reach out to me, this website, it is a form, contact council, but it does go directly into my email. Send me a note, tell me what you think. And then Mike's email is there. We are excited to work with you and hear from you. And thank you for listening to all our policy and data wonkiness. We're so glad to be here. Thanks, Lowell.
Thanks, Mike and Councilmember Walker. And we'll have a social hour after this, so if you have any burning questions, I encourage you to ask them at that time. I next get to introduce Maria Teresa Gámez and Jaala Smith. Maria Teresa Gámez is a Colombian filmmaker specializing in multicultural and multilingual documentaries, as well as communication for development. A passionate tree lover, her first job in Tacoma was with the Tacoma Tree Foundation. She currently serves as the Language Access Coordinator for the City of Tacoma and leads Woods of Memory, a community project that brings people together to plant trees across the city's diverse neighborhoods. Maria Teresa is also president of Biodiversa Foundation, a Tacoma-based nonprofit connected to its 17-year-old sister organization in Colombia. Jaala Smith was born and raised in Tacoma and has spent their adult life serving as an educator, social worker, artist, and community organizer throughout the Puget Sound area. Now settled back in their hometown, Jaala invests in Tacoma grassroots organizing networks that address the devastating effects of systemic racism and supremacy, from the housing crisis to food insecurity to environmental justice. Jaala believes that everyone knows how to cultivate safe and healthy spaces for their community to grow, play, and love, and that we all have the right to do so. If you spent time with Jaala, you know that these are not verbs, they walk the walk. Welcome.
Hello, I'm Jaala. Use she, her, and they, them pronouns.
Good evening, everyone. Maria Teresa Gámez.
Thank you all so much for being here. It's really amazing to see all of our friends and supporters in this room talking about all the good work. So we're here to talk about community. We're going to go swing all the way from the numbers all the way to the people. It takes both. So since 2018, TTF has been working to bring trees to the places where they're needed the most, where community health and well-being can benefit the greatest. Our focus has been on neighborhoods from Hilltop all the way down to Spanaway. And this year alone, we reached over 1,600 households, providing more than 4,000 trees and planting over 600 of them with you all. And And about 200 of those households received free wraparound services like utility locates, site assessments, permitting, tree matching, tree delivery, planting, and watering support. And we know that without these added supports, our urban tree canopy would quickly decline, leaving our already vulnerable communities at an even greater risk. Now, it's really easy to measure our impact in numbers like the 4,000 trees I just mentioned, but we know that our true impact happens at the relationship level. Trees being planted with trusted community members and neighbors are the trees that truly thrive right alongside the communities they grow in. And building that kind of trust takes a lot of patience. It takes time to really listen, to understand concerns, and to respond with flexibility and care. And when we make those investments and when we lead with relationships, our new trees become more than just infrastructure. They become living members of our community.
Thank you. Good evening again. So I've been working on conservation for almost 20 years in different countries with different communities. And I know that conservation and sustainability are in the hands of the community that live in the land and that interact with it. So out of all that conservation, my favorite is urban conservation because it's the one that allows me to see and to control the impact that I cause where I live. And so anyway, in 2018, I landed my first job in Tacoma as a local. And that job was with the Tacoma Tree Foundation. And thanks to them, I had the opportunity to deeply connect with communities, with the residents. And one day, working in South Tacoma, where I live in between, in the boundary between South Tacoma and the east side, the best of two worlds. I saw a flyer for a disappeared woman. So my body reacted instantly, and a woman who was behind me saw my reaction, and she started talking to me, but instead of reassuring me, she educated me about the issue that we have in this area. That woman was a tribal woman. So I went to home and I started researching, and I found out the numbers that we have in this area regarding the disappearance of tribal, immigrant, and transgender women. So I was in disbelief, but then that disbelief became intolerance. And guided by my work and the opportunity that the TTF provided me with, I had an idea. So I thought, what if we plant a tree for every single woman who have disappeared in our area, and these trees can have their name and their story, and I picture flowering magnolias and the ginkgo and all that. And also, I thought trees outlive us, and they are a living monument of our history and a living memory of the people who we are not supposed to be forgotten. Also, they are an excellent space. They provide the space and opportunity to remind everybody to take care of our girls, of our women, and to take care of each other. So I often believe that my ideas are great. I like to think of myself as a visionary, but I know that that's not always the case. So I like to evaluate my ideas, and to do so, I talk to everybody, especially the people who might be impacted by my initiatives. And it took me years to start shaping and reshaping this idea with the community, especially where the communities of immigrant people live in the east side of Tacoma, in South Tacoma areas, and around the city as well. And so I started talking and reshaping the project until at the end of last year, the Greater Tacoma Community Foundation decided to fund Woods of Memory. It's pilot phase, which is what we are doing right now. So these kind of projects never belong to you. They belong to the community. And I'm grateful that my friend and partner in this work, Julie Dugan, has helped me lead the effort to involve not only the residents and the organization, but the businesses. Because in that way we fight barriers. We have businesses interested in hosting a tree for community members who might not have their own land to do this. So speaking about that, so much has happened since we started the project. So first of all, Camara stepped up and said that they want to host a Woodstock Memory Corridor, but they want to plant alongside with their foster youth, especially those that are aging out of the system, because they want them to learn about the risk and to learn about resiliency and care, and to embrace these initiatives, especially because they are very vulnerable. Then we were approached by a Cambodian community member at Salishan, and she asked us to plant a tree for Xavier, the 14-year-old kid who was shot at a bus stop in 2023. So the neighbors who were around us listening to the conversation said that they want to be part of it. And again, we take the step back to listen to them, and they said that they should plant that tree together with the communities involved in the land of the Tacoma Housing Authority, which is down there, and also involving the transit staff who had the difficult task to clean up the place after that. So what they want is a community healing planting event, and we are working on it right now. So most recently, an immigrant community activist approached me and asked me why I wasn't planting trees for my own people. So I asked him to elaborate, and he said, we immigrants are like trees. We are like a seed or like a little tree, and we get planted and we root. And now we are being removed. And you guys know how difficult it is to remove a tree, right? How much you have to deal with it so it doesn't get damaged or dead. So they want me to plant trees for our immigrant people who are disappearing, especially for the ones who are actually disappearing through the cracks of the system. So as you can see, our project suffers from tremendous scope creep. But you can be certain that our trees are going to be loved and are going to be taken care of and are going to be sustainable. So it's impossible to do this work without the community, but it's very, very hard or impossible to do it without the people who have paved the road for us before. And that is you guys, the Tacoma Tree Foundation, who accepted a different approach to community engagement. I remember Sarah Lowe telling me, we're going to go there just to listen, and we're going to learn. And that's the best approach, because we have been building meaningful and real relationships and building trust. And I also want to recognize the work of the urban forestry team at the city of Tacoma, because your data is amazing, but one of your innovations is bringing the language access component to our communities and having the Cambodian, the Vietnamese, the Spanish-speaking communities, the Russian communities, as well as the Koreans, and now the Ukrainians, coming to your events and picking up trees and living happy with their new trees. So for that, on behalf of Biodiversa, my dear friend Julie, who has to deal with the paving too, and my community ambassadors, I thank you. Thank you so much.
Amazing. I'm so grateful to work with Maria Teresa and the work that we're doing. Just to close out, when we invest in these kinds of relationships and when we heal harm and protect the most vulnerable to oppression and climate change and violence, we're choosing to believe in tomorrow, in each other, and in the possibility of a truly fair and thriving community. As those working on the ground, like Maria Teresa was saying, we know that planting trees and caring for the future takes all of us. It takes neighbors, it takes governments, it takes immigrants, local organizations, small businesses, real estate agents, renters, social workers, teachers, parents, landlords, and funders. Each of us have a unique role to play in nurturing the shared vision, and we are so deeply grateful that you choose to invest in it with us. So thank you for believing in Tacoma's community forest.
Thank you, Maria and Jaala. All right, now I'll get to introduce Lowell Wyse. Lowell joined the Tacoma Tree Foundation team in 2021 after a career in higher education. He first joined as a board member, and since October of 2021 has served as executive director. His worldview is shaped by being a descendant of both Swiss-German Mennonite farmers who moved to Ohio's Maumee watershed seeking religious freedom, and the Ojibwe people who continue to steward the lands and waters around Lake Superior in northern Wisconsin and Minnesota. I first met Lowell at a tree giveaway at Second Half Cycle in the summer of 2021. Lowell, it's been really fun and frankly impressive to see the growth of the foundation over the last couple years. I remember the first branch out. In those days, we didn't have a truck, we didn't deliver trees ahead of time, and we relied on personal vehicles to get trees in the ground. My little red truck was glad to assist, although at times hauling trees in your Prius felt like a little bit much. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Lowell Wyse.
Thank you so much. It's so great to see everyone here and be part of this incredible evening with the energy in the room and all the different stories and the music. Just thank you all for being here. Some of you may know that this month is a special one for the Tree Foundation because it was in November of 2018 that Sarah Lowe filed the paperwork establishing us as a nonprofit organization. So we're turning 7 years old this month. I'm also celebrating 4 years as executive director, and I'm so proud of the progress that we've been making in this time period. Just to get started tonight, I want to say a special thank you to Mike Carey from City of Tacoma. Since becoming the urban forester for the city about a decade ago, Mike has been a tireless voice for the importance of trees in our community. I'm thrilled that he was able to share this updated data tonight and nerd out with us, and that our elected officials like Councilmember Walker are taking action on trees. When I first started working in Tacoma's environmental community 11 years ago, here's what urban forestry looked like. The city of Tacoma had set a tree canopy goal and mentioned it in a few plans. There was one urban forestry staff member at the city, Mike Carey, and there were some key partners meeting in a group called the Puyallup Watershed Initiative Forestry Community of Interest. I was part of some of those meetings, and I remember discussing how we might build capacity around urban forestry, given the area's low tree canopy numbers and the lack of public funding in that space. So as you can tell tonight, we are in a different world today. The city of Tacoma updated its century-old tree ordinance, better protecting trees on public property and setting new requirements for trees planted on public property. They have increased investments in urban forestry, and thanks to vocal community support, elevated trees as a key strategic priority. In fact, the urban forestry program was the first city program to incorporate data from Tacoma's Equity Index and to develop programs in direct response to those needs. I think that's worth a round of applause. So with the emergence of Tacoma Tree Foundation as a nonprofit partner, the city was able to develop the community tree program, which makes focused investments in tree planting and education in the neighborhoods that need trees the most. So in short, Tacoma is stepping up. And I want to thank Mike and Kristina especially for their leadership on this. Let's give them a round of applause. So all this data, all the tree numbers, all the stories you're hearing, these are indicators of our shared success, but we really need to keep going. And this is generational work, and we all have a role to play. We can expect continued progress, and we can also expect some setbacks along the way. Here at TTF, we're currently finalizing our strategic plan for the next 5 years, which will shape how we grow and what we do between now and 2030. We're fortunate enough to have all this support from a powerful community that is represented by all of us inside this room. We are fueled by a highly accomplished and committed group of staff members and a passionate volunteer base that is motivated by mutual care. And tonight we're excited to announce the theme of our end-of-year fundraising campaign, which is water. Water gives us life, and it also gives life to the urban forest. Every summer, we spend a little more time than the previous year watering trees that we've planted in parks, at schools, and along our streets. It's a big time commitment and a lot of work. But we know that the effort is crucial to help these trees get established for the next generation. And we also know that watering is an act of caring for our home and for each other. We see this level of care when folks participate in our tree walks, our workshops, and our Nature Explorers program. Our goal with this end-of-year campaign is to raise $100,000. This funding will sustain Tacoma Tree Foundation in 2026 and enable us to continue increasing access to stewardship. To reach this goal, we need as many folks as possible to donate $500 to the cause of caring for Greater Tacoma. You could be like our longtime friend and supporter, Donna Thompson, who has pledged $500 as seed money for our end-of-year campaign. You could be like another donor who wants to stay anonymous, but who told us they were pledging $500 in order to care for their community during this new political era of brazen disinvestment. Or you could be like Carolyn, who donated $500 earlier this year in honor of a friend who passed away and whose life and work have been dedicated to environmental stewardship. So, thanks to these contributions, we are already 1% of our way to our end-of-year goal. So only 99% to go if my math is correct on that. You can learn more about our campaign and ways to give out in the lobby as you're exiting. We have a fundraising table set up. And by the way, we've got some pretty cool t-shirts for sale that you might have seen some people sporting around the room. We have calendars for sale this year for the first time to celebrate some of the many photos and efforts we've been doing throughout the year. And we also have some really cool letterpress broadsides that were created around tree themes, and some of those were created by us at a staff retreat recently. So we're really excited to share those with all of you too. So in conclusion, as we wrap up and kind of transition to our social time, just wanted to let you know you're all invited to stay and socialize for a little while longer. This connection is essential to our work, which is why we save time for you to keep talking to each other and keep in touch. So we've got some refreshments out in the lobby, but as you go, what I really want to invite you to think about is your role as a steward of these lands and waters. And I want you to revel a little bit in all the progress that we've been making together. So thank you so much for coming to State of the Urban Forest, and thank you for supporting the work of Tacoma Tree Foundation. So that concludes our program, and we invite you to stick around and mingle with everyone. Thanks so much.